Good morning. Today I want to talk about American politics basically and why calling people labels like racist and fascist is really counterproductive. Even though you could probably make some really complicated philosophical argument that they are, but I don't think many people are aware of that argument and use that kind of definition in their everyday life. So the prime example of this is this YouTuber called PF Jung. I found him recently. He's pretty funny. His whole shtick is he's a whole enlightened centrist. But recently, his last few videos, he's been satirizing about him being far right. And he's kind of makes all these jokes about all these issues, and he's yeah, but I'm gonna vote for Trump. He did a stream with JJ McClue about the new Project 2025, the Conservative Manifesto, about Trump's plan, what to do when he gets in. And basically, P.F. Young's whole point, or a lot of the point, was look, people, all these lefties, they're calling it fascists. It's not fascist, okay? He's probably spent about half the podcast going over, clarifying, this is not fascist. When all these lefty streamers are calling the conservative people fascists, it's just turning people off, as it certainly did him. He wasted half an hour, probably not half an hour, but it takes up a big part of his mind. There's a clearly not fascist. It's who cares whether it fucking does or does not fall into the definition of fascism. Just look at what they're doing. It can still be pretty fucked up if it's not fascist. I was watching a Jordan Shanks video about identity politics, and he said something that I really agree with. He was yeah, the Republican Party is just Christian ISIS. And I was that's actually more accurate, because a terrorist, you can a lot easier be a terrorist than a fascist. A terrorist is basically someone who just inflicts mass damage on something for terror, and that's basically what the Conservative Party do in America. They just minimize any regulation on government until the environment is fucked and everyone's just coughing up lead and dying of lung cancer. Air pollution kills about millions of people every year. So that's basically just they're fucking terrorists. Anyway, but don't try to argue me on the definition of that. Just argue whether it's bad or not. Mr. Jung, he makes a big point about how he's not right wing because he cares about transgender issues, and he's believes in transgender rights, and he's I'm nothing like Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is far right, Christo-Nazi, fascist, and he kind of virtue signals that over and over. He's I'm pro transgender rights, and he even points in the Project 2025 document. It's they will uphold the Supreme Court but restrict it to its minimum standards or something. But the fact that he's even the whole video was just about that, and LGBTQI plus issues. It was that, and whether they're fascist or not. No, there was a brief mention about climate change, and he said, I can tell he's been Jordan Peterson pilled, because he thinks, oh yeah, climate change is a real issue there. He gets his brownie points for being a centre, because he acknowledges climate change is a real issue. But then it's just I don't think it's worth dismantling our whole society and structural systems for that. We don't have to fucking dismantle anything. Renewable energies, or at least nuclear, is so viable. I don't know about nuclear, but I'll just say that Our World in Data puts nuclear energy and renewable as efficient and reliable, and they're linked with the organisation Effective Altruism. I trust them. They're all solid, academic. They're not funded by any unethical corporations, and they've got data about everything, and they're all I trust them. I think I've got good reasons to trust them. I'll link them in the description. The Ben Shapiro put it really well. He was I think he said something humans, we don't adapt. We don't innovate so well, but we tend to adapt. And he's like, yeah, that's just a general principle for how we go. And he was saying, well, nah, we shouldn't reduce our emissions because of a couple reasons. Instead, we should just be building seawalls at infrastructure to stop the consequences of climate change happening. And it's like such an esoteric, like evidenceless point. Like, build seawalls. Do you think America's really just gonna like spend all that money to go build fucking seawalls in the Solomon Islands or whatever, which is already being affected now, or like the Torres Strait Islands in Australia? They've got way more priorities. And this whole like innovate and adapt thing, like, it's so abstract. What does that even mean? Renewable energies are getting innovated now. They're getting more efficient, cheaper, and like more effective to use. I don't know what he's talking about, but he's also paid by like Koch brothers network, so obviously he's gonna say that. And same with Jordan Peterson. It's just the same kind of echo. And this little fellow PF Jung, his brain's been what, I guess he lives in America, so a lot of people like that are in America. Maybe he is kind of centre in America, but let's get back to the topic. So this fascism kind of label. So Second Thought made a video about Project 2025, and it was like, had big in the heading. I was like, fascists, and I was like, okay, I don't know if they're fascists, but I'm just gonna watch the video. This dude, he was referring to them casually as fascists, and he didn't really say why they were fascists, but he had lots of good points on why they were bad. About like the Republicans basically want to give all the power to the president. So first thing that's stuck out to me about that, it's like people vote, and then whoever gets the majority, that's the president. So if the president has all the power, that's just ignoring all of the minority of the people who voted. But in a more representative system, president would have, say, 52% of the power, and then the other party would have like 48% of the power. If you get what I mean. That's a very oversimplistic way of explaining representative democracy. But I feel like that's more fair than just like 48% of people just getting completely ignored because they were in the slight minority. But the more potent aspect of it is Second Thought explained this so much better than me. But basically all the bureaucracy, that gets a bad name. All the people regulating, so making sure the laws that are passed actually get enforced. So making sure like minimum wage is upheld, or milk is actually pasteurized, or there's no fucking lead in our petroleum. Just basic things that like corporations should do, which is actually the law, just to make sure they get enforced. Now this PF Young dude, he's like really kind of scared of that, and I think that might go into his kind of deep state beliefs, sort of, and globalist agenda. But like, as if these conservatives are going to be any less globalist. It's just going to be the corporations they're letting one free willy-nilly, like they have, like bombing Papua New Guinea to shreds, or letting the Indonesian government do it so they can mine there. Fucking Shell facilitating the execution of like Nigerian activists. Currently, like even now, they don't really have any, they don't have to follow the laws outside of their own country. They've been operating globally for ages, like encouraged by Reagan. Reagan's like deregulation allowed them to be like more globalist than ever. Like that's the whole Conservative Party shtick. Whereas on the other hand, like the people who do get targeted as the globalists, the WEF basically, they're just saying like, look, stakeholder capitalism. That means everyone has a say on what these corporations do, rather than just those corporations. And Ben Shapiro's video on that, he's like, top-down governance, it doesn't work. That's just a dictatorship. It's like, you can employ effective strategies to stop corporations being cunts. That's just like rules. You're saying we shouldn't have any rules, Ben? So like, if I want to be like this corporation, you can't fucking hire mercenaries and go take over this province of India and employ their kids for $2 a day to make fucking shoes for me, which is basically what the East British India Company did for so long. That's what Nike's doing now. Maybe not the mercenary parts. But, like, that's just, like, a rule that I think mostly everyone would agree should be enforced. But then Ben is, like, building up some esoteric, like, top-down governance. It's not good. Also on the WEF point, like, people are scared they're going to be, like, making us eat bugs and, like, converting us into all these transhumanist things, or, like, by 2030 we'll own nothing. I don't think the WEF is going to, like, violently enforce all these kind of ideas that they're having. They're just kind of predicting and facilitating the future. They're going to enforce, well, they're trying to enforce regulation to, like, to achieve, like, the UN's Sustainable Development Standards, which is all pretty fucking good if you ask me. It's, like, getting equality up in the world, reducing poverty, like, helping the environment, being sustainable, and people will just be like, nah, that's a front. But if you actually look at kind of the UN's policies, like, all they're doing is just regulating corporations. And then what the corporations do in response, they're like, no, they're imposing our freedoms, and they spread all these kind of half-truths, or, like, they'll put out a document and that's, like, looks pretty bad on its own without context, and, like, this means this, they try to fucking control you, but really they're just controlling corporations so they don't fucking employ people at $2 an hour, or, like, fill out oceans with nuclear waste. So that's more or less, like, the regulation kind of pro-WEF argument. P.F. Jung, he also made a video about he was like, I'm steelmanning the WEF, and his idea of steelmanning was like, yeah, they're not aliens. They're not like this big kind of devil sex cult. Like, they're not aliens. So that's him steelmanning it, basically. Just because he says they're not aliens, then that's, like, giving them the most robust kind of idea. It's like, to say that it's stupid, yeah, obviously can't. Can you, like, think a little bit deeper than that, actually go into, like, what they're implying? Like, the whole thing, what I just said about regulating corporations, he just doesn't go into any of that. So this Jung dude, he's big nationalist. He's like, we shouldn't be interfering with other countries. I think I already covered that when I was talking about how the corporations, like, the Conservative Party is not fucking nationalist by any means. You look at what their donors are doing, it's pretty fucked. Like, they control, it's an old book I'm reading, but they said in 2007 it was 40% of the world's media are controlled by 5 companies, which is pretty fucked. Murdoch, he when he started in Australia and he was going into America, there were rules saying you can't own a television network and a newspaper, I think. So I was like, you can't have the monopoly on the media. And then Murdoch got a television network and a newspaper, and then he applied for an exception in the United States, and they granted him that. And then, like, after the exception was expired, they were just like, oh, well, you can just have it all. I think it was Reagan that allowed that. Like, what the fuck? It sounds like a good rule, right? Like, so you don't control all the same media, but then the Republicans were like, oh, no, you can just have it all. Like, it's fine. Sounds pretty fucking globalist to me. Okay, so you might be thinking, this just occurred to me, that the WEF has all these kind of corporations on board, and they're all, like, bad ethical, and they're all, like, gaslighting us. Leonardo DiCaprio. Yes, right. I am of the opinion that, like, us as citizens, we can, like, you should be doing stuff, but, like, you can't, your responsibility is so diminished compared to these corporations, which is the WEF's whole fucking point to them. So this is what I think is happening. Corporations So, like, fucking BlackRock or, Shell's a good example. The Shell head, I don't even know if he attends the WEF, but there's definitely a company like him. So the CEO of Shell, he goes to Davos and he sits there and he's like, and Klaus Schwab's like, okay, we need to make everything sustainable, stop climate change, 100% renewable by 2050. And then he looks around the big room, and then the Shell dude's like, I can do 10% renewable by 2050. And then, like, Greta Thunberg will be like, no, you fucking fascist. And then the Shell dude's like, oh, this is bad for publicity. Okay, I'll do 15%. And then they, like, try convincing him more, but he's like, nah, 15%, that's all I'll do. And they're like, okay, 15%. That's what I can agree on. And that's basically how the COP25 meetings work of agenda. It's trying to get everyone to, well, that's for countries. It's to get everyone to just agree on like a baseline kind of level thing. Baseline rule so they can work together to solve this issue of climate change. So how does this relate to calling people fascist? I know I got a bit off topic. How does it relate? No, so basically I think P.F. Jung and J.J. McClure, they should have spent their whole hour-long stream kind of talking about this kind of shit. Like corporate government regulation, like what the Conservative Party will actually do, which is just let the fucking Koch brothers run wild, like controlling all media like they did with Rupert in the 90s, and then just letting companies like Shell and BP just commit all these human rights abuses around the world. Because that's what, like, reducing the bureaucracy is going to do. It's just going to turn the bureaucracy into, like, corporations, and then we'll just have these corporate overlords all over the world, which, like, that's literally what the free market represents. I'm not, like, a communist or anything, but it's just the reality of it. Like, you need to have some kind of regulation to basically anything. So that's what they should have been talking about, just going back on the fine points of, like, the pro, like, how much regulation should be on these corporations. Like, this fucking transgender kind of identity, like, virtue signaling bullshit that he employs. Like, yes, like, transgender and gay rights, they're, like, real and important issues, but in a 900-page document about fucking the fate of America, like, seriously, you're talking about the definition, whether I should be called a fascist or not, and how much you're going to regulate same-sex discrimination in the workplace. Like, and they've done this on purpose. Like, so that's what they figured out. They just, like, you just concentrate on these little, like, identity politics issues, whether we should, like, allow immigration or not, or, like, same-sex marriage. Like, they shouldn't even be fucking... I'm basically just quoting a Jordan Shanks video I watched. But, like, they should just be written down, like, already. Like, yes, same-sex marriage, done. Like, not even a fucking consideration. And that's how laws get passed all the time. Laws get fixed all the time. But in America, when it comes to, like, the corporations having to do something, it just becomes this big fucking thing. And it's not even about what the corporations are going to have to do. They're just being like, oh, the woke Marxists are marching on again. And that's a problem. Because, like, the fucking infrastructure in America, they will just refuse to build stuff unless it's, like, the competing with China bill or something. Like, Biden just started getting on top of America's crumbling infrastructure. Like, you want, like, up-to-date bridges and, like, houses that actually work. And you can't just enlist private companies to do it that'll only seek to maximize profit. And then Ben Shapiro will be like, oh, but then they're deficient, and someone else will come along and do it better. And that's how the free market works. And it's like, well, where the fuck are they? Like, Macca's has killed, like, millions of people with diabetes. Like, the tobacco companies have killed, like, probably so many people every year. Same with alcohol. Like, where are the better products, Ben? But there are better products. You can buy groceries yourself and cook them yourself. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And people just aren't. They're fucking addicted to sugar. And so this comes down to where do you want to place the responsibility. Ben would be like, personal responsibility. Like, people looking out for themselves. It's not your fault if they're eating Maccas. Well, like, yeah. But if you can take a step, like, saying to Maccas, like, don't put so much sugar in your shit, and then that would lead to, like, so much less people not getting diabetes. You should probably do that, shouldn't you? Huh? Like, petroleum used lead in it until the government made a law saying you don't use lead in it. Like, milk wasn't pasteurized until the government was like, you need to fucking pasteurize this, because I don't even know what happens if you drink non-pasteurized milk. But my point is, if you didn't call him a fascist, then that would just be half an hour less of him worrying about whether he's a fascist or not, and maybe he might get onto some more important points. He wouldn't get so defensive and get to, like, the root of the issue. And it also gives the Conservative Party, like, so much ammo, because in reality, like, it's a hard case to make that they're fascists. I like them being Christian ISIS a lot more. That's got a lot better ring to it. So much easier for them to make the argument that they're not fascists. And once they do, they can be like, oh, well, they're fucking crazy. Like, obviously we're not fascists. So, like, why would I listen to their other points? Jordan Shanks, in his video about identity politics, he said that you have to play into it because you don't have a choice. And that might be... Nah. I disagree with that. Like, just don't fucking call them fascists. Just come at it on kind of their terms and just talk about the economic points. Because no one, like, really, people want, like, a bridge. They want their apartment building to be, like, intact. And they want their bridges to work. And they want they don't want lead in their petrol. And they want clean air to breathe. Basically, just come at them with those points. Being like, Project 2025 is going to have collapsing buildings, air pollution, which actually kills, like, the most people in the world. I don't know about the most, but it's pretty fucking high up there. You know what? The more I talk, the more I'm convinced these conservatives are fascists to the working class. So, all that being said, PF Jung, I like your videos. I didn't, like, offend you by any of this. And I think you actually mean well, but I think you're just exposed to, like, some shady sources which you probably shouldn't be trusting. Like I get that you like Jordan Peterson's opinions on, like, self-help and, like, the way you should, like, interact with your personal relationships. And I probably will agree with him on most of that. But as soon as he extrapolates that onto his political mindset, which just gets infinitely more complex, you just can't apply it. Yeah, but thanks for watching, everyone. And I've got a video coming out. I've scripted it. I've got it coming out very soon about the nuclear energy versus renewable debate. So that should be pretty spicy.